the words that I did pick kind of build on one another because I mean,
Mm,
pausing is like the basic, and then obviously presence or mindfulness builds on that. Excuse me. And then intention that will build on, or movement will build on intention. So that's kind of where I was going in my head, anyways. And also, those were the first words that really came to my mind, which I wanted to go with because I feel like that's usually like, you know, your body trying to tell you something or your brain trying to tell you something. So,
yeah.
okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Excellent.
like we could actually just start with that little overview you did of your four words.
Oh, well, yeah, no, and I could definitely like talk about it a little bit more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Well,
I
I
can
thought you
totally
said something really
replicate that.
powerful right there, which was that they go in order: pause, presence, intention, movement. And you said that pause leads to, what was it? Intention? Something like that?
Yeah, pause
Pausing
is
kind of.
more like like I try to think of like pausing as just like you're just pushing the pause button, which is more or less like that's the precursor generally to mindfulness. You know, like just slow your roll, slow things down a little bit more. At least that's how it is for me, anyways, with my mindfulness practice. And I mean, we need more presence
So,
in this
so
world,
you
but
find yourself like with your mindfulness practice. I'm curious what you mean by that. That's your second word,
Mhm,
but it seems like
mhm.
you're starting off with like a almost like a red light type of thing. Like you got to just before you worry about the mindfulness, you stop beforehand.
Yeah, yeah, just have a pause, or at least that's what I suggest for my clients, anyways, because that's important in terms of you know helping them find that way because a lot of people mindfulness is very it's nebulous like it's not a definitive term or they're kind of tired of hearing it. So yeah, I mean, I hate to say that because of course I cherish mindfulness, but some people are like, I don't understand mindfulness, but I'm tired of hearing about it and I don't really understand what it means. So simplifying it down to just like pause, pushing the pause button, and then trying to find out how that segues into your life and what do you need to kind of pay more attention to, and like what do you want to apply your mindfulness to. So yeah, pausing is
Interesting.
generally like the first step for
Interesting.
most individuals that I work with, anyways. Yeah,
I like
because
that
some
a lot.
individuals, well, thanks, because
Yeah.
some individuals I work with, they don't have any interest in trying like meditation, which to me is it's hard for me to understand because I love meditation and like it's changed my life on so many different levels. So
Mm,
it kind of makes it a little less scary. Like, oh, you
mm.
just have to pause and focus on something, and it makes it sound a little bit less like threatening or something for them.
Totally. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
how I think it's really good because you're even saying like when you pause, you can think about what you want to be mindful about. Like thinking oftentimes is, you know, aren't I supposed to not think when I'm being mindful? Like, oh,
Oh, yeah. I hear that a lot. Aren't I supposed to not have any thoughts when I'm meditating? That's hard to that's hard to master. Um, so yeah. All right, well, cool.
yeah, pause is a great one.
Yeah.
So, like, when you're going through your life, do how do you pause? Like, how do you just like put down the dishes or when you're turn off the computer or when you're driving, do you just like pull off to the side of the road or do you turn off the cell
No.
phone? Like, what does pausing look like for you when you pause?
I mean, you won't really notice, like if you're an external person that I'm with, another person that I'm with, you're not really going to notice. Like Jen, oh, I can see Jen's pushing the pause button right now. Because she has that crazy look in her eyes. But no, it's just kind of it's that moment of recognition, I feel like. Um, and I feel like the moment of recognition that you need to pause and the pause button are sometimes the same thing because you realize, oh, I need to maybe slow down or I need to kind of take a breather, take a moment. And that in and of itself is often the pause button. Instead of just going into a response, you just recognizing, okay, something needs to happen, something needs to change, and then we'll go forward from there. Then you can kind of dictate what your action is. Do I stop and focus on my breath for a minute? Do I stop and look at something and focus on that intentionally, or do I if you're having a conversation with a person, do you stop and be a little bit more mindful of the words that you're choosing, things like that.
Oh, I love it.
So
Before I
yes.
was doing this whole intuition stuff around food and I was actually trying to do leadership coaching, emotional intelligence coaching, and I didn't succeed at it. I couldn't really attract the crowd and so forth. But when I was doing that, there was this powerful model of like quote unquote success, which was emotional intelligence. And when I hear you say recognize, it was emotional intelligence was like this pyramid, right? And our and really cool people, they were able to embody these four elements of emotional intelligence, which were like the foundation was awareness. That's what I hear when you say recognition. It was emotional awareness of what you're feeling, like what you're feeling. And when you say recognition, it just clicked for me. I'm like, oh yeah, like that's the foundation of like success in whatever area you're talking about, like relationships or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So after you pause, and you mentioned, and pausing too has been like kind of the theme of your story, your transformation journey. You were working a lot, you're traveling a lot,
A
right? And
lot. Yeah.
yeah, like the whole, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, what were you doing?
No.
Burnout and
Yeah.
everything?
I was fairly burnt out. So my previous career, I was in that career for 12 plus years, and I loved it. I was actually really good at it, and I did love the work that I was doing, especially at the time. I was working in quality oversight and working at a small to medium sized biotech. And in the research industry, it can be pretty uh, stressful in terms of deadlines, for the data locks and just training your staff. I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't want to
What were
bore you
you
listening.
research? What were you researching, or like
Well,
what was that involved with?
a wide range of things. So over the 12 years, I started in HIV/AIDS research. That was the first couple of years of my career, and that was something I was very passionate about. Being from Florida myself, I have had a lot of friends who've been impacted with that virus and the disease. And so it's something that I've always taken to heart ever since I was young, very young, and became a pure sex educator when I was a teenager, and then got into research and did HIV/AIDS research for the first couple of years. Worked more on the data collection side of things, so I went to clinics and made sure that the data was clean and blah blah blah. But then I went into, oh God, I went into women's health. What other things? Diabetes. I worked on diabetes studies before. I've also worked on generalized anxiety and depression, depressive disorder studies. And then the last few years, I worked on mostly oncology as well as pulmonary arterial hypertension, or PAH. So terminal illnesses, unfortunately. But it was a little bit more personal because the CEO of the company that I worked for at the time, her daughter actually had PAH. And the CEO was, for lack of a better way to put it, hell bent on, finding a cure and finding treatment options more than just the one, which is what her daughter had access to when she was first diagnosed. So it was a very, even though I don't have children, it was a very relatable and very personal battle. And you were kind of quote unquote fighting the war with her. So it was really cool. But yeah, so mostly cardiopulmonary work, and I loved it. And I felt like I was good at it. Colleagues thought I was good at it, but it was to the point where I was traveling every week. I was, only really home sometimes on the weekends and Fridays, and it just got to be a lot of nights of just hardly sleeping, high stress, not really eating of the best or moving that much or exercising as much as I'd like. uh you know I was still taking care of myself, but not as much as I usually do. And unfortunately, that created a little bit of high blood pressure for me for a bit of time, and that to me was the culmination of me deciding to follow my dream. I've always been a coach part-time for years. I mean, if I really want to be honest, I've been coaching for at least 20 plus years. If you look at even from college and things like that, just coaching friends. But definitely, I've been paid for coaching for over the past 10 years. So I opted to consider doing it full time and kind of venturing out on my own after doing it part time as kind of like a passion project on the side for a couple of years. I realized, hey, let me at least give it a try for a couple of years and see what it's like and if I can make it fly. And I did. So that's kind of the bulk of the story. But yeah, I was busy. I was overstressed. I was, oh gosh, it was just a lot going on at the time. And this was my way to really refocus on myself and refocus on others. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
just so rewarding. So
Yeah. Was it a hard stop in your life, or was this pause kind of was it a hard stop, or was it like a gradual transition to coaching?
yeah, more or less a gradual transition to coaching. I formerly had my business for maybe about a year before I finally left, and it's been 3 years, a little over 3 years now since I've left corporate America or my previous career and went into my coaching career full time. So yeah, it's definitely a lot more like real right now.
It's
And now I'm
awesome.
at the point. Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
I
now I'm
feel
at the
like
point of
coaches are
just
just they always, they gotta they're just, they're drawn to like joy, or when
yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of joy in
yeah.
coaching.
I mean, it's very joyful. There, of course, are ebbs and flows with
Sure.
any
Yeah.
career. You definitely take on your clients, stresses and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's to be expected because you grow this relationship with these individuals, and they become so important to you, and you want the absolute best for them, and you want to help them in any way that you're able to. And you also want them to see how strong they are and how capable they are. And you want to empower them, to where they're not, uh, having as much self confidence issues. Or, I mean, we can go on. That's a whole other rabbit
Yeah.
hole. But yeah, I help them also find their own pause button and
Yeah,
how they
yeah.
can how they can apply the pause button in their own lives. So
It sounds like you also, when you paused and slowed down your corporate career, you recognized like what you needed to be mindful about, or to have a presence about in your life. What were some like behaviors did you start sleeping more? Did you increase your self-care in other ways? I think you probably were sleeping more because you mentioned that you weren't sleeping. But
yeah.
how did you, like, once you slowed down and you began to recognize, like, what did you bring more, awareness and mindfulness to in your life?
Myself mostly. But yeah, I will say that first week after I left my career to establish and kind of venture on my new career, I slept. That was the best sleep I had ever gotten that week. I can still remember it because I slept so hard and I slept so well. And I remember
Mm.
waking up thinking, wow, that's what that's supposed to be like. Like I haven't felt that except after like a race, or something really, really, really strenuous. And then you sleep like a log and then you wake up the next day. But this, I was also excited about it the next morning, waking up and getting up and going and doing the thing with my clients that I had at the time. And
Huh.
but the biggest thing was certainly focusing on myself more, making time for my workouts a little bit more. And then just, I mean, a lot of the habits I had already established even when I was leaving my previous career in terms of really doing ample meal prep and, um, you know, honestly, the last, I'd say, 6 months to a year of my career previously, I made huge leaps and bounds with my own health, which is great because I was actually coaching individuals at the time, and that was actually I got down to the leanest and I'd say, dare I say, like the healthiest I've ever been. But health is all relative because I was extremely lean, and being a female, there was a fine line there. Just in terms of our monthly cycle and things like that. And I hadn't experienced any of those issues,
Mm,
but I was
mm.
starting to experience just a little bit more fatigue than I should have had at that point. So yeah, I don't want to kind of ramble on that at all, but you
Yeah.
know, it was a matter of when I left the previous career and ventured into coaching full time, focusing on myself more and making myself a little bit more a priority.
And speaking of this second word, mindfulness, you've mentioned you're a fan of meditation. Like, what does that look like in your daily life?
Mhm. Honestly, so, meditation I found when I was like 15. And I just found it through a philosophy class that I was taking in school at the time. And it was theory of knowledge. And I thought that it sounded very intriguing. And at the time, I was having a little bit of anxiety in high school because I was in a magnet program and it was really intense. Um, and it did help a lot. And even through college, went to local Zen centers, did actually weekly meditation with friends in
Oh
college because
my
I had a couple of
gosh.
friends. Yeah, I had a couple
Oh
of
my
friends,
gosh.
especially, one of my friends, Paul. He and I would actually meet up and meditate together every weekend, and we would do that, and then we would just keep one another accountable during the week, which was great. And so it was nice to have a couple of other, fellow meditators, and we all actually identified as Buddhist as well. So that was helpful. And so meditation's always been present in my life. And now it looks like, off to my left over here, you can't really see, and viewers or listeners can't certainly see, but I have my meditation cushion in my little area here. And I usually spend just a few moments, every day, every morning. Probably not every morning, to be honest with you.
I love it.
Full transparency.
No,
But
good.
yeah, totally. It's not realistic.
Yeah, yeah, yes,
But
exactly.
I spend a few minutes, whether it's on the cushion or even in this chair that I'm sitting in right now, just taking some deep breaths, deep belly breaths, trying not to be as much of a chest breather as I tend to be, especially when that stress is elevated. But that's what it looks like to me. Now, some
Mm.
days I certainly meditate longer. I'll meditate up to 30 minutes. The longest I've ever gone is 2 hours, but that was mostly like in an actual area. Like that's when I was at a Zen center. I haven't done that in years, to be honest.
Me
But
neither.
yeah, I was like, oh, it's different when you have a community around you and you have that energy that you can utilize and kind of feed off of. But when you're solo, it's different. So that's what
My
it looks like for me.
gosh.
But
Yeah.
honestly, mindfulness is in everything. Mindfulness is when I sit down to my journal and take a moment,
Yeah.
and I'm trying not to rush through it. I'm just trying to be as present as I possibly can in that moment, because I feel like presence is the thing that is lacking the most for a lot of us, especially right now with the current pandemic and other things that are kind of happening. I think it's made us realize that, oh wow, we need to show up for our loved ones and maybe our partners and maybe ourselves a little bit more. So yeah, I
Do
mean,
you
mindfulness
find
varies.
do you find that your clients either do they ever like underestimate or maybe are skeptical of how important or how useful mindfulness can be? That, maybe, I don't know, I can imagine someone saying like, oh yeah, like presence, poo poo, something like that. Or do you ever run into that?
I do. And sometimes you have to be careful because I do a lot of breathing exercises. That's something that works for me. Although it didn't really necessarily work for me at first because I have some anxiety around my breath. And that's a whole other story. But, some of the people I work with also have the same thing. Maybe they have asthma or some other underlying breathing issue, and maybe focusing on your breath is not the ideal thing. I can relate to that and completely respect that. So then that's when we need to find something else, whether it's a Zen tangle or doodling or drawing or, you know, something else that they're not going to be resistant to, because I'm not going to try to have them do something that they're just not open to, because that's not realistic.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's some individuals, and I can completely understand this too, because I've said this before. I don't have time to meditate, or I don't have the patience to sit there for 10 minutes. And then that's when I say, well, what about 1 minute? 1 minute
Yeah.
is pretty good. And it actually is very useful. And it does help you kind of create that pause and help you realize what you might need to do for yourself in that moment. So,
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the most accessible ways that people resonate with mindfulness is this like really just 1 minute or whatever. But also, I love what you said earlier, how you can like think about what you need to be mindful about. I mean, it's like, I think mindfulness can be a time where you think about your priorities
mhm.
And
Oh
like,
yeah.
I think we in the West can really resonate with like that type of like, it's kind of like the to-do list, right? But it's a little bit different. It's not like this worrisome thing. There's some relaxation that you're bringing, and I appreciate this emphasis that you don't need to focus on your breath, because at the eating disorder center where I'm currently working at, um, there was a yoga class, and I heard the clients talking afterwards how the yoga teacher was big on breathing, and they were kind of like, yeah, I didn't want to say anything to her, but when I focus on my breathing, I feel like, anxiety, like what's it called? Hyper focus, right? Like I'm like super aware of my breathing, and I can't, like, there's like panic behind it. And I was kind of able to be like, the yoga teacher, like, she probably, like, you could just focus on like squeeze. I taught squeeze your hands. I said squeeze your
Yeah.
fists right now and then
Oh,
relax your fist,
love
right?
it.
And can you feel that relaxation in your hands? Like if you squeeze your fist and then you relax, it's like that's what this is about. It's like it's
Mhm.
relaxing that tension in your body, and um, right. It's like kind of this relaxation thing. It's so important.
Totally. And sometimes, especially before bed, if people are finding they can't go to sleep, which is
Mm,
really common, especially now, because I think some of us might be out of our normal routine and schedule. So we're staying up a little bit later, watching TV or something like that. But then they get restless before going to bed. So that's when I usually recommend, hey, just squeeze everything you can, all your muscles, and then relax and relax. Like try to slowly scan from your feet up to your head or vice versa, because sometimes that works for people too. And, just relax your muscles as much as you can. And yeah, I feel like you kind of have to go into one extreme in order to allow the pendulum to kind of settle in the middle, whatever looks good for you.
yeah.
And that's where I feel like that exercise you have them do with squeezing your
Yeah,
hands
yeah,
helps
it's
so
so
much.
accessible.
So
It's
yeah,
so
it is.
accessible. Yeah.
It is. I love it.
And I love the sequence of your words, by the way. I feel like they go so naturally into each other because I mentioned earlier about priorities. When you pause, when you pause, and then you can just kind of get a little space, a little bit of a relaxation going, and you're allowed to think, right? There's not this pressure to clear your mind. You're allowed to kind of think about what's important to you. I feel like that is how you set an intention, right? Isn't that's your next word, intention? I feel like
Totally.
I feel like they flow really naturally out of each other. You're thinking about what's important to you, and then is intention different? I'm just exploring. It's coming up to me right now. Is intention different than thinking about what's important to you? I feel like
I think
intention is
so.
kind of like creating a little bit. Like, okay, I know
Definitely.
what's
Yeah,
important to me.
it's going towards the action state, I feel like, because
Hmm.
pausing is more like recognizing and then having a presence about you is okay, I'm showing up to this moment. And then intention is, well, how are you going to show up? What is your intention with this? What is your intention with whatever you want to be mindful or present with? And I personally love the word intention because I feel like it can also be applied really well to movement, which is the next word, which I know we'll go over. But your intention with your movement, which I see quite often with the clients that I work with, because sometimes we're just trying to put in the reps, for example, in our fitness, when I'm talking about health and fitness, trying to put in the reps and just trying to get through the workout and everything like that. And if we were to just slow down a little bit more and maybe not make the workout for speed, but instead make it for really showing up and being intentional with every movement, intentional with every movement of the barbell or dumbbell or whatever you're moving at the time, that makes such a big difference, overall, um, and can really change your approach, and it can deepen the presence that much more.
Like
I
instead
feel
of
like
instead of doing like if you're
exactly,
listening, I'm pretending to do a bicep curl. I'm doing like really really
yeah,
fast, but you're
fast, yeah, yeah, slow it down, yeah, and at the same time, it does bring that mindfulness aspect to it, where you're more present and you're really showing up for yourself. You're truly showing up for yourself. And I feel like that's definitely sometimes what can be lost is just the intention of things and the intention of your goals. And sometimes we forget about our goals and we forget about our why. And I feel like the intention really brings us back to the why. Should we ever forget or lose motivation or, whatever we seem to be experiencing, especially now.
Yeah, and it's how you want to show up, right? Like I feel like the mindfulness is like kind of the category, the domain, the aspect you want to show up into, and then intention is yeah, like how like kind of okay, you know what you want to focus on, then it's like kind of filling in the details. How like I love what you said, how you want to do it. What comes to mind actually for me, and it's when you were speaking about movement, was I've been jogging, and I come from a background of like push, no pain, no gain, that type of thing. And so, um, so like most of my life I've been running like, okay, faster, faster. And I've been really enjoying jogging. And I think it's because I thought about my intention, like, what's my intention here? My intention is not to become super fast. My intention is more like get the blood moving, like sweat a little bit, give myself a breather, like kind of just clear my mind and to have some fun, to listen to some music. Like I don't need to push myself super duper hard to do that. Like I can just jog. Like
Yep.
it feels weird kind of still saying that. I'm so conditioned to, push, 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 but I like jogging now and I really do like it. It's been nice.
Yeah. Well, especially where you live. That's a great place. I love that area of the country. It's such a beautiful place. And
Bay Area.
I know. And just the mornings are always so beautiful. They're freaking cold if you're not expecting it, but the mornings are usually amazing there. Yeah, I love it. I love the Bay Area. It was on my short list of places to move before I moved to Denver. So
Denver's pretty cool too.
Denver is cool. Denver is very cool.
I
Much
know.
drier.
Yeah, when I visited my friend there, I was like, dude, it's sunny and snowy. Like, what is going on here? Like,
It's so crazy. Even after a snowstorm, you can basically be outside with shorts on. It's so weird because the sun is so intense here. So yeah, it's interesting.
so like one acronym I've heard about, well, not acronym, one way I've heard about thinking about an intention that I've kind of liked. I want to know if what resonates with you when you try to teach people about intention. I've heard the word intention, like muscle tension, I feel like there is some tension a little bit with intention. Like you're kind of thinking like, how do I want to show up? Like I feel like that activates kind of like if you're sincere and you're aware of what's important to you and you're thinking about, oh yeah, this is what I want. You're kind of desiring a certain way of showing up. Like whether it's at work, you want to show up a certain way, or you want to have a conversation with somebody. Like there's a vision, a desire and that kind of activates like this energy. And then the energy kind of creates this tension. And it's like, there's some intent, you're in tension, and then that kind of, you can channel it better.
I love that perspective. That's amazing. I'm
Thank
gonna have
you.
to remember that and maybe even steal it or borrow it. But no, it's true. It puts forth the action. I feel like,
Mm.
yeah, and I think that that's so important because we can have all the goals in the world, but without some level of action, I mean, nothing's going to happen. I hate to sound kind of Debbie Downer on that, but I mean, it
how do
does
you
require action.
how do you set like an intention? So you've paused for a minute, you've kind of maybe relaxed and thought about your what's important to you, and then this setting the intention thing, is that like a visualization, or is that like just or maybe that's just another thought process, or
Yeah, it can be honestly whatever works for the individual. I know for me, it's more what's the purpose? What purpose do I want to bring to XYZ, for example? And, having some sort of purpose that will usually set the intention a lot more easily because then it's an understanding of why, or it's like a rationalization, which sometimes us humans need because we need some sort of rationalization for something. Um, we're infamous for rationalizing ourselves out of good decisions too. So, it works both ways. But you're trying to obviously set the intention to work in your favor. And, honestly, for me, whenever I sit down for, my meditation or my moments of breathing, for me, my intention generally is, okay, this is how I want to show up for the rest of the day. And this is my intention. This is going to be my baseline for this morning or this afternoon, whenever I get to the meditation, of how I want to show up for the rest of the day. And that is something that works for me. And it does work for a lot of individuals. Sometimes when they set an intention, or, what is one of my journal prompts that I'm trying to remember? It's, yeah, daily affirmation is, dot, 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 I am fill in the blank. And I feel like that works for a lot of people to kind of shift that mindset to focus on whatever their intention is, or whatever they want it to be. And then they can kind of carry forth with that. So,
When you think about your purpose for the day, is that like a kind of a feeling, or a feeling and a thought, a feeling and an affirmation?
for me, it varies honestly
Yeah,
based on
yeah.
mood and kind of where I am and how I'm feeling, how was my sleep last night, that type of situation. So it can be pretty fluid. I try not to put it too much into a box, because then I feel like that can give us like a little bit of an all or nothing type of mentality, which I try to avoid. And, for me, yeah, it varies based on my mood. Most of the time, recently it's been a matter of setting the intention of just remaining as focused as possible with certain goals that I have for the day and projects that I'm working on right now for like an early fall release. So that's, been my intention generally speaking. Um, but yeah, honestly, it varies. It all depends on kind of what I feel like will move me more that day.
I love the focus one. I was kind of mind wandering a little bit I was like, what's my intention today? Like, I hadn't thought about it today. But I think what resonated with me was focus. Yeah, I think oftentimes mine's to like relax, or to like not like to stay grounded, I guess, or to just keep sane, I guess. But yeah, today seems like a focus one is resonating with me. Anyways,
Nice.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I hear, when I first read your words that you sent over, pause, presence, intention, movement, I know you do a lot of movement exercise coaching yourself. So I was imagining, like an exercise thing. But as I hear it, I'm talking with you. I also think that you do mean movement physically, but I feel like you're also talking about like, you know what you want now, like whether it's moving in the direction of like work or relationships, or you're like you're action, it's moving. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can certainly be obviously with the particular movement in
Hmm.
general, but you know, yeah, what way do you want even your life path to move? I mean, in what
Yeah.
direction do you want to move on the broad spectrum of things, obviously? Because I think innately a lot of us do want some level of, I hate to say this word, but self improvement. There is something that, generally speaking, all of us are pursuing, or are trying to improve, or trying to increase awareness of, or trying to increase performance of, the whole slew of things, right? And yeah, that's when having that intention just can make such a big difference. Having that why at your focal point, every day, to remind yourself of why you're wanting to move forward. So it can be both physical movement, it can be spiritual movement, it can be life movement. I mean, anything that really works for the individual. For me, I try to kind of touch base with myself, especially quarterly at a minimum, but definitely every month, and just try to figure out, okay, how am I moving forward spiritually? How am I moving forward towards the goals that I have, physically or performance wise, and then also business wise, and then definitely relationships wise. So, you try to think of like more or less like body, mind, relationship type of thing. Um, and of course, this can be in any type of, I don't even know what to
Yeah,
really
yeah,
call
it
it,
could be
any type
community
of category.
environment. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything that really speaks to people. I
Hmm.
really, really recommend that they have some goals surrounding those buckets in life,
Hmm.
and then that will help guide them a little bit more if they can break it down into at least some sort of process steps along the way. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I feel it.
yeah. No movement. I mean, yeah. There's so
Yeah.
much. There's so much. I will say, and I'll go ahead and kind of finish with this when it comes to movement and
Sure.
intention, especially for everyone, especially now, we might be sitting a little bit more. I know I am. I'm sitting a lot more than I usually am, because normally I'll coach a few classes even a week, just because I really love human interaction. So I'll coach a few classes a week at a local gym, and I haven't been doing that, just with the gym situation and things like that. And because of that, I'm moving less than I normally do.
Yeah.
And just having some level of intentional movement every day, whether that's in the gym, walking, I don't care what that is for individuals. If I can leave with some sort of encouragement on this podcast, is just to say, hey, figure out how you can intentionally move your body today. If it's not a rest day, even if it is a rest day, go for a walk, something. But give yourself that gift of moving intentionally, especially if you're able to move, and obviously there is a level of ableism in my words that I'm choosing here. But if you're able to move, take advantage of it, and use that to your full capacity. That doesn't mean that you need to beat yourself up and go hard or go home type of thing. No pain, no gain
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just find what works for you. Find what makes you happy and
I
do
love
it.
going on walks.
Gosh,
I love
yeah,
going
I
on
love
walks.
walks. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love walks. I
I
have a
love
dog, so that
walks.
helps. Yeah, I do. I love walking, especially first thing in the morning. Listening to a podcast. It's just such a great way to start the day. Yeah, and to me, that really sets the tone for the rest of the day. If I don't immediately sit on the cushion, which lately I haven't been sitting on the cushion immediately and doing some sort of meditative practice, it's just not what's
Yeah.
working for me right now. But the morning walk is really good. And you can be mindful on the walk too, which is
Yeah.
really cool. You can choose it as, feel the ground underneath your foot, whatever you want to do. So there's a lot of things you can apply that to.
Man, I'm taking away so much from this conversation.
Oh, good. I'm
I'm
so
just thinking, I'm
glad.
just thinking like I haven't reflected in a while about like those four domains, or whatever. I usually go with like the body, spirit, business, and relationships, or health, or whatever. Instead of uh, two more questions. One.
Sure.
Where do people find you?
Oh, they can find me. Well, I do have a website, www.shifthumanperformance.com. They can also find me on Instagram at shifthumanperformance. They can also email me if they have any questions or just want to, touch base with me, Jen at shifthumanperformance.com. And, I'm on Twitter too. I think it's shift yourself up. Shift human performance was too long. But
Oh, I
yeah,
see.
find me online, reach out if they have any questions. More than happy.
Yeah, and then wherever you're listening to this, there should be a link down to Jennifer's website and some social media stuff down below, so you can check that out down below. And then the other question I always end with is like, what's been your biggest? I usually say eating enlightenment, but we really haven't talked about food. But anyways, I think it still
Oh,
fits. Like, what's your biggest enlightenment in the sense of like shift in perspective and new kind of like a transformation of perception, or how you think about health or whatever food differently?
yeah. For me, not that I was ever really trying to restrict myself overly or anything like that, but just making sure I was eating enough.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I find that with so many, especially the athletes that I work with, and they're under this conception that they need to eat, especially female clients, they need to eat, 1,000 to
uh,
1,200 calories. And
uh,
that's just such a miserable way of
uh,
living. And they're wondering why they're so tired and they don't have any sex drive, or they don't have any like joie de vivre, like they don't have that spark. And it's
yeah.
because they're just not eating enough. And I'm not saying, hey, you need to eat like 3,000 calories, but be a little bit more mindful of, okay, this is what my body really needs. And of course, that's a whole other level of,
Yeah, this is a
intuition and things like that.
yeah.
But, you know,
Man, I
feed,
could go
feed
on
your
and on about
activity.
this
Uh,
conversation because with binge
yeah.
eating, emotional eating, it's like what happens is people don't eat enough. They're eating like way too little, and then they lose control. They go on a splurge, and then they think that they're eating too much, which leads to
Mhm.
them eating less. And it's like, oh, it's a horrible backwards cycle.
Mhm.
Anyways, That's a whole different conversation. Maybe we'll have you on again sometime. We'll see.
Deal. Because that is something I'm very passionate about, is making
Yeah.
sure people are eating enough and eating enough of the good things. That was the big thing. Is just wow, Whole
Yeah.
Foods, Whole Foods, not the grocery store, but just making sure it's nutrient dense, and
Yeah.
you feel so much better eating that versus other foods. And
Yeah.
believe me, I still eat the other foods,
Yeah.
but that's not consuming 80% of my diet. So Whole Foods are. But yeah,
Nice. Thank you so much, Jen, for coming on. I super appreciate your presence and your pause, presence, intention, movement, little affirmation phrases.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Jared. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.